Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, officers. Good afternoon, members of the public online. A warm welcome to the Southampton District Council Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting for March. We will begin with item 1, apologies for absence.
Chair, we have no apologies. We have a full house.
Excellent, thank you. Item 2, minutes. To approve as a correct record the minutes of the committee held on the 12th of January 2023. Members. Councillor Spencer.
Thank you, Chair. This happened after the meeting, but at the meeting there was talk on action point AM 1.4, which related to climate change and funding and so on. And there was some question and query about numbers. And I came away certainly slightly confused. And I asked if some sort of clarity could be given to exactly what the funding is, when it was to be allocated to actual projects, what timescales were and so on. And as I say, that was born out of lack of clarity from the meeting. I wrote to you, as you know, and we had a response back. So can I raise that as an issue that's outstanding from that meeting to obtain clarity on the funding, the purposes, the projects, the timing and so on?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Spencer. Thank you for that. Mr Powell, did you want to come forward? Because I know you were...
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Afternoon, members. Yes, I mean, at the moment we've got a forward plan of work that's been identified through the delivery plans and through Better Lives for All. We're also compiling a list of other projects which have got indicative budgets against them. That is work in progress. More than happy to develop that further and bring something back to members so they can see the full extent and our proposals as it stands. As I say, some of those are nominal amounts against a particular project and they will be subject to future funding requests. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Powell. So it would be fair to assume that when the new council overview and scrutiny body considers the climatic update at that point, that document will be available as part of that review.
I think that would be the appropriate time, Chair, yes. Thank you.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Spencer?
Yes, I am. It gives a very clear indication of purpose and timescales. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other comments, members, on the minutes of the last meeting? In which case we can consider those agreed? Yeah? Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. In which case we'll go on to item 3, urgent business brought forward. I have no urgent business. Amelia, anything that you're aware of? No, grand. Okay. Item 4, division of agenda, to consider whether the discussion of any item of business is likely to lead to the disclosure of exempt information. Again, I'm not aware of any. Item 5, declarations of interest. In accordance with the Code of Conduct, members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests, including the nature and extent of such interests they may have in any items to be considered at this meeting. No? Okay, thank you very much. Item 6, public forum. Anything from the public? No? Lovely. Okay. Straight on to item 7 then. Thematic update communities. Start with you then, Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Chairman. We've got Ian and we've got Alexis here, so we can get all the assistance we help from questions for members. The community wellbeing theme within the Council's corporate plan covers a very wide range of areas. This update reflects the progress of those actions that we have identified to support our communities over the past 12 months. Of the 5 separate activities, 3 are on track and 2 are slightly off track, but with a plan to place to ensure that the delivery of the objectives will take place. First of all, the Dartmouth Integrated Health Hub is due for completion in May 2023. It is proposed that a separate report is brought before members to fully explore the benefits that this joint project with the NHS will bring to the community that it serves. The Council's Disabled Facilities Grant team, led by Dave Sexton, continues to work hard to deliver adaptations to residents' homes that means that they are able to live better quality lives and occupy their homes for longer. We have completed 56 DFGs and 49 accessible home grants since April of last year in the South Hams. Our leisure partners, Fusion, will be presenting a full report on their activity to the April meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, so it is proposed to wait for that update from them. In terms of our delivery of projects to enhance our outdoor local spaces, this is largely made up of spend on our S106 allocations. The report provides details of what funding has been spent and allocated to projects. The theme area is described as amber, as the total amount spent and allocated is below the original forecast allocation. A significant amount of funding has been allocated, and I'd like to thank the parish councils and all community groups with that funding, and some parish councils have actually match funded the work. Officers will continue to progress relevant projects on the South Hams District Council land and facilitate projects being led by parish and town councils. Members are actively encouraged to continue to engage with their town and parish councils and other relevant organisations to facilitate the expenditure of the S106 contributions and enable the delivery of projects to enhance outdoor public spaces in their areas. This is really important. There's lots of money there to our allocated communities, and we must work with our parishes and our communities to ensure that really good projects come forward. With regards to Action CW 1.6, working with voluntary sector officers are regularly having meetings arranged by the CVS Community Connectors. This is giving us a real insight into the voluntary sector activities taking place across the South Hams. CVS have recently appointed a new manager who is keen to work with the council to ensure that we support one another in meeting the needs of voluntary sector groups. And I was able to meet the lady who is the new manager, I think just after Christmas. Finally, the rural poverty pilot has been delayed due to shift of focus onto the cost of living crisis. However, as part of our response, many of the supporting actions have contributed to the project study area. The information we have gathered so far suggests that young people are particularly affected by poverty in the area. For example, this creates barriers to good health education. We are now engaging with young people in the community to understand the practical issues that rural poverty presents to them and how we can work with partner organisations to overcome those barriers using existing community assets. We have also learnt that mental health concerns, a lack of transport and lack of access to a dentist are some of the main concerns of residents in the area. The final outcome of the pilot project will be twofold. First, measures that have been delivered to support the local community, and second, the learning that has been done by officers on how to effectively engage with our communities. It is proposed that a report is brought before members to share the learning that we may have and to inform how future progression will take place. In terms of support delivered direct to the community, the Council has been successful in organising in partnership with the Western Integrated Care Board, Devon County Council, a project that will provide free energy advice to residents of South Brent, and if required, referrals into the wider grant assistance. This project will use NHS data to identify vulnerable households and target support on those in most need. We have also engaged with the local primary school to connect with families of young people, understand their concerns and signpost them to assistance where required. We are also in the early stages of a partnership with the NHS to bring mental health first aid training sessions to South Brent. The hope is that 3 sessions will be offered to the community using existing assets in the South Brent area. I hope that this is a welcome update on the community wellbeing theme. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Mr Luscombe, did you want to add anything at this stage?
Not at this stage, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Birch, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's on CW 1.1.
Okay, so what I'm going to do then, members, as we always do, I would direct you please to page 17 of the papers, where we will work through as we do, which means I will be looking indeed now, Councillor Birch, for anyone who'd like to raise questions on CW 1.1. We'll start with you and then any other member after that, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you. In CW 1.1, it makes reference well, it is, the subject is tackling rural poverty in an area, or rural poverty. Does that extend to the towns of the district, and in particular Totnes and Dartmouth, where we as a council have areas of incidence of poverty in both towns? So I suppose my question is, does rural poverty extend to towns? And if it does, can it be recognised that there are areas within Totnes and Dartmouth that need to be included in any future programmes?
Obviously, at the present moment, this is a pilot. That the pilot areas of South Brent and parish areas. I know that there's a considerable amount of work being done by CVS, CA, and council officers in Dartmouth. I know that, and I'm sure the same work is being done in our other towns as well. But Ian, can you assist?
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Whilst members asked us to concentrate on the South Brent and surrounding parishes as part of this pilot, I think that the lessons learned and the learning which has come about from doing this work will lend itself to dealing with rural poverty, or just poverty in general, in other areas of the district. I think particularly the learning is in terms of being able to share some health data, the information that lots of different organisations hold, and be able to pool that data to have a common view of maybe problems that are present, hearing directly from those people affected by issues around cost of living and rural poverty. It's really good. It's been really good to learn about and to understand how we can do that more effectively.
I'm not certain whether that answer is a yes or a no. I mean, can it be recorded that in tackling rural poverty, that also extends to those areas of where there's incidents of poverty in Totnes and Dartmouth, please?
Mr. Molyneux.
Thank you, Chair. I think the answer at the moment is it's a pilot. So the answer is, in terms of your question, strictly no. At the moment, it is a pilot looking at South Brent, but it's the principles of the actions that we can then look at and rolling out. I would say, in further answer to your question, that we are probably working closer now with voluntary agencies than we have ever done. We have Citizens Advice are on a monthly call with myself, Ian Luscombe, Mr. Luscombe, Mrs. Blake, who's responsible for housing, and Mrs. Hodgkiss, who's responsible for council tax and benefits. So we are trying to share learning, understand the issues that we're all experiencing, so that we can support our residents much more holistically than we have done in the past.
Councillor Hawkins.
And can I just say that I think it's up to members as well to work with all our voluntary groups, CV, the Citizens Advice, our caring groups, community groups, to assist those residents while this pilot is being rolled out.
Okay, I'm going to come to Councillor Spencer, then Councillor Sweet, then Councillor Jackson, in that order.
Thank you, Chair. I might echo part of what Councillor Birch was saying, in the sense that accepting that this is a pilot, it doesn't actually include any areas to the west of Ivy Bridge or to the north of the A38. You know, and for the want of naming names, Bickley and Cornwood Ward, and other councillors may want to name their Woolwell wards. So, and I take on board what you're saying. So that was my first part. The second part and last one was, there is the comment being made there that we are now engaging with young people in the community to understand the practical issues that rural poverty presents. Can we just have a bit more meat on the bone to say what young groups, what young people, where, and how is that contact being made, and how might that eventually be farmed out beyond South Brent?
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. So we started off the project by engaging with a number of groups which were representative of the groups which were in South Brent, a lot of voluntary groups and a lot of people who were just concerned and wanted to make a difference. Since then, we have engaged with Citizens Advice, CVS, and the police, for example, but also the school, the primary school, came to one of our engagement meetings, and were very keen to be able to provide us access to some of the data that they had around hardship and some of the pupils that they've got and where we might want to target any support. But also offering up their school as an asset that we could use to try and engage with young people, but in the primary school situation, engage with the parents of young people to try and understand some of the real, lifetime lessons that we could learn from them in terms of how the cost of living was affecting them. We've also had contact with some of the secondary schools which are in the catchment for that area. And they have invited us into the schools as well to have discussions with older children to try and find out what the impact of poverty is on them. Obviously, we've got to be quite considered in terms of how we ask some of these questions and deal with some of that feedback. And we're taking advice from partner agencies and I think also Exeter University have been contacted to find out what the best mechanisms are for engaging with young people so that we can get a good quality of information back from them in terms of what support they might need.
Councillor Sweet.
Thank you. Barry pretty much asked my question, so that's fine, very eloquently. But I was just wondering, you obviously mentioned the secondary schools. What about going into the leisure centres? Because obviously those youth groups are starting up again now in Totnes and Ivybridge, I guess, are kind of the ones that would feed into South Brent. And who would be leading on that? Who's the lead officer?
So there's been a couple of lead officers. One unfortunately left for another role, but then Karen Proctor took over the lead for the project. But she's been joined by a lady called Kirsty Smith, who's a public health officer with lots of experience in working for Torbay and public health team. She's come into the team and been able to offer her expertise in terms of dealing with health inequalities. But she's also got some really good contacts in the existing health setup. And in terms of access into the integrated care system, she's had really good contact with the Integrated Care Board West, who are the care board that cover some of the South Hams area, which includes South Brent. And when Councillor Hawkins talked about being able to participate in a fuel poverty project, that's due to the connections that she's been able to make. In terms of leisure, we've been in contact with Active Devon. They've been quite supportive in terms of some of that engagement with young people and giving us some tips on how we might want to do that.
It says it's only on Amber, so how are we going to get back on track for that then?
Can we come back to that one in a minute?
Okay,
If we just let's do that at the end. If we just take Councillor Jackson's question next, and then we'll come back to that one.
Hi, I've got two parts actually. The first one is it came up at a Kingsbridge Town Council meeting on Tuesday about the government's funding of leisure centres, but I don't know if Fusion would be eligible for that because it's a sort of an enterprise that isn't the council, but the buildings are council buildings. So do you know whether we get the funding for that?
Can we deal with that one under very briefly when we get to leisure? Okay, let's take that one at 1.4, I think it is.
And then I'm just curious, the dentistry, which I think, that's a really massive concern for lots of people, and especially it's public health, in children's dentistry, and people just can't find NHS dentists in the South Hams. So I wonder what is actually going to happen, how you're going to support that, because I think it's brilliant.
So there are instances in other parts of Devon where they have been able to bring in a mobile NHS dentist to serve the need of a population that isn't served by a practice sort of locally. We are in contact with NHS and Devon County through the same contacts that we've used for the fuel poverty scheme, and we are currently asking the question as to whether that might be available. I can't say any more than that because it hasn't progressed much further, than that. But we're hopeful that we can try and assist there. Yeah.
And would that go to schools and things as well?
I don't know the details of it yet, but I think part of the benefit of being engaged with so many groups is that where there is a particular area of need, we're in contact with those people and we can have those conversations, so we can really target in that support where it's most needed.
Okay, I'm going to come in there and let you know that my vice chairman informs me that in reference to this specific project, there is a dentist in South Brent that actually has NHS. So in terms of this project and the pilot, that's probably relevant to know that South Brent is lucky enough still in this case to actually have an NHS dentist in the village. If we come back to the point that Councillor Sweet was alluding to, that I wanted to ask as well, Councillor Hawkins, it's amber off track with plans in place. If it wasn't off track, where would we be now? Can you help members to understand where we would be as opposed to where we actually are? How much further down, what would it look like if we weren't off track?
I'll let Ian answer that, but we were delayed about 6-7 months, and that is why it's now taken. That's why we are where we are. But I just wanted to come back on the issue of Fusion. Fusion have got a community work officer, but we've met. They come to the quarterly meetings with the council officers and myself. That person is in place, and they are working with youth groups, etc., to actually get the identification that you need and we want to actually feed into both this project, but also the whole district area. There has been some new funding, and I'm looking at Steve. There has been some new funding that was announced in the budget yesterday for leisure centres, for swimming, as you say, and I understand that we will be able to apply for some of that funding, or Fusion will be able to apply for some of that funding.
I'm going to refer to the chair, and we'll cover that when we come to 1.4.
The only reason I wanted it covered there, Councillor Hawkins, was just because is there a direct tie-in with this pilot? I mean, if there is, that if Fusion are able to work with South Brent under this pilot, but I'm just very aware, and Councillor Spencer will back me up on this, we talk about the geographic difficulties that Fusion enjoy with the fact that, are they coming into South Brent? If they are and it's relevant to this pilot, then I don't mind us taking it here, as long as it's relevant to the agenda paper, was my point, Mr. Mullally.
I don't think Fusion are actually relevant to this section, for the very simple reason, when Fusion won their contract all those years ago, their outreach work was very limited.
In which case, I'm very happy to take Fusion questions, but we'll do it at 1 to 1.4.
If I could just add to Councillor Hawkins' response in terms of the delay, I think another reason is that it is hugely complex in terms of being able to go into a community as a council and try to engage with all the right people and consider all the different perspectives around providing support for a community. Perhaps naively at the beginning, we thought, well, we could speak to the main people, there'd be a few people we can speak to, and yes, we would get most things covered. I think what we've found is that there's so many offers of support, there's so many organisations that are set up. It's quite difficult to navigate between them and get a full understanding of what's already in place. So it has took a lot longer than I first thought it might, but I think that's really part of the learning that we've had.
Okay, thank you. Members, are we happy to move on that basis? Yeah, is that okay? Okay, in which case we'll go on to 1.2. 1.2, you will note, is on green, and the report is being taken to the executive. So I'm going to propose that we probably leave questions on 1.2. Everyone happy with that? And we'll go straight on to 1.3. So support more people to live independently for as long as they choose through efficient delivery of housing-related grant schemes. Members, any questions on CW 1.3, which is currently rated green? Councillor McKay.
It's a fairly trivial question, but I just it doesn't really give an indication of the number of applications for DFGs and for the assisted living. Do you have any numbers associated with that?
Thank you, Councillor McKay.
As opposed to the ones that were actually processed and got something done.
It's very rare that we would decline an application. The applications that come through have generally already been vetted by the occupational therapist. So what the process is that the person in need generally contacts their occupational therapist. They go through a process to identify whether that person needs what assistance that person needs, and an initial assessment of their finances, for example, and then once it gets to ourselves, it's generally a case that we will process that application if it's got to that stage. So it's not the case that we would reject many applications. It would be very rare for us to do that.
Any other questions on 1.3? Mr. Mullen, you want to come in?
Yeah, just another observation to help members understand the figures. It talks about 56 being complete, but the level of work in those 56 can vary massively. So one could literally just be a handrail to get up a step to access your property. It could be a complete revamp of the whole house, bathroom, kitchen. So to say 56, it doesn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Translate to the same amount of work. That's what I would say.
Councillor Jackson.
So I've got one more question about. So do you work in partnership with like housing associations as well on this, or do they get money for this?
We do work in partnership with housing associations. There is an agreement where they would fund certain types of work and the council would fund certain other types of work. We would generally get involved in the more complex grants with regards to housing associations. They might fit a ramp or a handrail themselves, but we would get involved with showers, maybe stair lifts, and certainly some of the extensions that we might do, as Steve was talking about.
Councillor Hawkins.
And Dave Sexton and his team are very, very good at when any time the government actually announce grants that could be available. Southampton District Council are really good at getting them as fast as they possibly can. And when I was the executive member for this portfolio many years ago, I went to one house in Totnes, and the family had a very small house. The son was disabled, wheelchair bound, but some of these grants are absolutely life-changing. You know, this gentleman had a lift put in from the lounge up to his bedroom, and it was, you know, these are the grants that are done, and they're done efficiently. Our team is really good at it.
I'm just going to ask Councillor Smurden, Councillor McKay, and then I'll come back to you. Councillor Smurden.
Yeah, it's nothing major, but I know from my own experience with my mum, who's 90, lives alone, fortunately, independently. But she gets, if she wants help, etc., the normal route is that they're assessed by NHS occupational therapy, who will then, I guess, then recommend. So how's the chain? You know, how does the chain work then from occupational therapy to, you know, somebody who's assessed as needing one of our grants?
So the occupational therapist would make a referral to us with the information based on what their assessment of their need, and the occupational therapist would suggest a scheme of works which they feel would be of benefit to the person who they've got, and then we would then write with them a schedule of works that we would then get priced up by a builder and get some quotes, and then oversee the work is carried out promptly into a good standard, check the work, and so on.
Councillor McKay.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I think it was about a couple of years ago, there was I had an application for DFGs. I was asked to look into it, and it transpired that the localities officers were doing the initial assessment. Is that still the case? Because it did lead to confusion. I mean, it was all sorted out in the end, but there was a question mark over, you know, whether they had the right skills, proper training, etc., etc. I don't know if that is still the case.
There are several steps to the processing and the installation of the disabled facility grant. Some require expert assessment, surveying, for example. We have got officers who are fully qualified to be able to do that work. Other visits are around checking that everything's okay for the applicant, and these are sometimes elderly, sometimes quite infirm, concerned people. So we do use localities to check up on works on occasion, but I can assure you that any work which is done has to be signed off by a qualified officer. I don't know the circumstances that you're talking about.
This was more to do with eligibility in the first place, not the works that was subsequently carried out.
one of our qualified officers will make sure that those works are eligible when that assessment's made. I don't know the circumstances you're referring to, but it could be that we do ask local localities officers to go and verify information from time to time. So maybe it was that, but if it's still a concern, we can discuss that.
Members, any more questions on 1.3? No? Okay, we'll move on to 1.4 then, which is increase active participation in sport and leisure. I'm going to go to Councillor Jackson first. You want 1.4, Councillor Birch? Yeah, I'm going to go to Councillor Jackson first because I know she had a specific question around that. Did you want to ask that again, Councillor Jackson, and then we can have that dealt with now?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, in light of the recent government announcement that they were going to make funds available for leisure centres, whether Fusion would be eligible, because technically they're not council run. The buildings are council buildings, but the Fusion is
I understand. I
a
think
not-for-profit company.
through you, Chair, I think Mr. Brooke could answer that one.
Mr. Brooke, did you want to? Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, really pleased to see this government announcement. It's 63 million, 40 million of which is for swimming pool decarbonisation. There are 800 pools, so it's 50 grand a pool, very crudely, subject to everyone getting an equal share and being successful, which won't be the case. It's many millions of pounds to decarbonise a pool. We know because we successfully access funding to help us do the assessment for our pools. So I'm really pleased. We will absolutely be trying to secure the money, but let's just be realistic about what it will achieve, is what I'm saying. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm still not sure if it's answered the question. You know, we will be eligible then.
Sounds like we will be eligible.
That's
yeah.
good.
Mr. Brooke is nodding.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Birch.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think this part of the report, I think it's, putting it bluntly, is totally inadequate. I mean, in other words, we're green on track because ONS is going to meet Fusion in April. I mean, surely no, the heading is increased active participation in sport and leisure activities. And all we've got is, well, you're meeting them in a month's time. I think, you know, there's nothing about key risk issues and looking ahead, etc. So I think that in itself is not satisfactory. We as a committee are meeting Fusion next month, and I think there are concerns as to the state of play as far as Fusion is concerned. By way of example, there has been improvements on the cards for Totnes for quite a while now, and this council has offered Fusion the possibility of funding to proceed with these works, and yet they don't appear to feel that they're in a position to make an application to this council for funding, and the end result is nothing is happening. Now I'm concerned as to Fusion's position. Now, quite clearly, if we meet them next month, in all probability, they'll put a fair spin on the state of play, etc., and they'll come up with reasons as to why they're not doing this and why they're not doing that. I think that we as members, if we're going to get anything out of our meeting with Fusion, that we should have a report from the officers as to what their view is as far as the state of play is concerned, re the position of Fusion, and in particular its financial position. And it may well be that such a report will have to be taken in part 2 prior to us meeting Fusion. What I fear is that we're going to meet Fusion next month and we're going to be fobbed off. And I don't think, you know, if that is the case, we're not doing our job. You know, one of our jobs is scrutiny, and we need to scrutinise Fusion, but we as members need to have the full picture, not just the picture from Fusion. So I think in the recommendation that is on the screen there, I think what needs to be added to it is that we as members receive an officer's report on their view as to the state of play of Fusion. And as I say, it may have to be taken in part 2, and I think we do that before we meet Fusion. so that we have all the facts before us and not be fobbed off by Fusion.
Okay, before I come to Councillor Hawkins, there's a couple of separate issues there, isn't there? One is that, you know, the thematic update is increasing active participation, and I take your point entirely. It's difficult for us to have a report in front of us with an overall rating of green when we haven't got that by dint of the fact that they haven't been to see us yet. I think the finances is a separate, very valid, but it's a separate point because it's not actually contained under CW 1.4 as a head. I think it's very relevant. So I think you're quite right, but I think we probably shouldn't conflate those two very important issues. We should have them separately, and we should say that in terms of the report, I think I would certainly be recommending that it's difficult for this committee to send this report away today with an overall rating of green on this specific point, because I think
Can I disagree with you? Because I think if Fusion do have financial issues, then clearly this council's going to have difficulty increasing active participation in sport and leisure activities.
Councillor Birch, I don't disagree with you on that. I think they're both terribly important, but I just think from a purely technical point of view on what CW 1.4 says about increasing active participation, I'd want to know what they're doing in that. And I'd also want to know, we're actually in agreement. I'd like to know about the finances, but I don't want the areas muddied. So, I mean, I don't know what Councillor Hawkins would like to suggest, but with Fusion coming in April, you've heard what Councillor Birch has suggested, and I think he's made some terribly valid points there.
Right. I think Councillor Birch has been slightly unkind to Fusion and slightly unkind to our officers. He knows that we've had several meetings with Tadpole, with Fusion on site in Totnes. As long as I'm the executive member responsible for leisure centres and for the well-being of the South Hams, my priority will be the investment in Totnes. I've assured this group many times on that before. I will continue to do that. We would, of course, if we hadn't had the pandemic in 2019, probably the investment in Totnes Leisure Centre would have been finished by now. We would have been in a different world by now. And the Totnes Leisure Centre would have been exactly as Councillor Birch and I think the Totnes members would have wanted. Fusion were going to come to this meeting, but have been put back a month. And I'm going to look at Chris. We have our quarterly meetings, and Steve, we have our quarterly meetings with Fusion. Do those reports that Fusion give us each quarter, do they go to all members? Because from those reports, the actual usage of leisure centres is actually doing very, very well.
Right, I was just about to bring that up. So the most current report from Fusion came out today to members at 11:21, but it's gone through the postmaster message service. Okay, the no reply at SW Devon.
I don't have it.
Which, now I don't know about anybody else, but the vast majority of things that go through there get a dustbin, and I was going to say, I apologise, Chairman, for interjecting, but what I was going to say is that this report is, in my opinion, is too important to go through that route and needs to be forwarded by member services or something like that. It should not go that way. I mean, I happened to look. It came this morning, because you've got the option of release, block, or permit. Well, you shouldn't have to go through that.
No, thank you, Councillor Smith. That's really useful. I'm going to go to Mr. Molyneux.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Smurden. I'll let Mr. Brooke answer the question regarding the quarterly meetings, because I don't attend those quarterly meetings. That's, I'm assuming, Mr. Brooke and Mr. Parkinson. So let him ask that question. I agree, Councillor Birch, with your point that this report doesn't give any information in relation to O&S committee having a view whether active participation, and I think we can learn lessons from that going forward. Fusion are down to present at next O&S meeting, which would be their annual report on performance, which will include participation. So I take that point. I think the finance issue is a separate issue, but I know you will argue it isn't, but that's what I would say. But Mr. Brooke?
Yes, so we do meet quarterly, and those reports are then brought into one format, brought back to this committee at those frequencies to which it comes to ONS. So no, they don't, as a standard action, get forwarded on to the members. That's for that quarterly meet. It's been discussed many times, the frequency of it. It is really important. When Fusion do come to talk to you, which they're scheduled to do, I hope, committee will find that some of their outreach work that they've been putting in place is going to be really positive, and I look forward to that conversation. Actually, I'll just remind the committee that the contract to operate Totnes Leisure Centre is between Tadpole and Fusion, not between Southampton District Council and Fusion. But it's probably only semantics, because we all want the same thing, which is to see that pool be as used as it can be and be as good as it can be for that community. So it probably isn't relevant. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Brooke. Councillor Sweet.
Thank you. I mean, I would just wanted to say, really, I think Fusion would be hard pressed to fob us off at this next meeting, because there's so many new activities going on down there. You know, I'm constantly seeing that they've got new instructors, and the kids' parties have started up again, and the rollerblading, and so there's obviously far more going on there. I mean, I agree that we need to see a bit more information, but
yeah, I mean, I think it's important to say that's one. You're right, but that is one leisure centre, of course, isn't it?
Sorry?
That's one you're talking about, presumably.
One what?
One leisure centre.
Oh yes, yeah. But I mean, Councillor Birch was talking about and we've talked about it through the whole of this council, the desperate need for those improvements to happen down there.
Right, members, I'm going to propose a course of action from the chair. I'm going to propose, please, that we remove green on track and we leave that as blank, Councillor Hawkins, because we can consider that next month. There is no point in passing something as green without the evidence. I'm also going to propose, please, that the report pack that comes to the next ONS on the agenda item around Fusion comes with an officer report that provides the information that has been requested. I don't think what Councillor Birch is asking for is unreasonable. I think an officer recommendation on where the Fusion contract is. Councillor Birch is right. If it needs to go into part 2 on finance, it needs to go into part 2. We are at a scrutiny committee and we need to scrutinise that contract. I don't think that's party political. I don't think it's unreasonable. I think that's a sensible course of action. Councillor Spencer.
Absolutely agree. I agree with what Councillor Birch is saying. But can we have the report before the meeting so we can at least have an opportunity to digest it rather than be presented with it at the meeting?
Well, I think the agenda papers normally come out a week before, don't they, Mr. Mungley?
They do.
Yeah. Okay. So on that basis, I'm happy to propose that from the chair. Councillor Spencer, are you happy to second that then? Yeah. Okay, we all are happy. Councillor Austin.
I do have a bit of concern on this. The government guidelines on PERDA is that councils will normally, I'm quoting here, councils will normally observe discretion about making new announcements during PERDA. Now, we do have to bear in mind this is 2 weeks before an election. We're in this period of PERDA. The exact reason why it's there is so that we don't do this, to make political footballs of particular things coming out at certain times. I'm concerned that the committee is, as I said this morning, I said exactly the same thing. As we're entering into a period of PERDA, we are getting sucked into being a committee that is asking officers to make new announcements, new information available to the voting public, and potentially we're even being sucked into things like discretionary decision making and so on, which we shouldn't be doing at that time. So I said exactly the same thing in the meeting this morning. The wording of it is that councils will normally observe discretion about making new announcements during this period of time, which is only 2 weeks before an election.
I will give you my commitment from the chair that I will discuss any agenda items at April's meeting with the monitoring officer. I have already done so with regard to the task and finish, which I will be talking to you about under agenda item 11, or in fact 10 on the feedback. But you have my personal guarantee from the chair that I will take full advice from the monitoring officer on any and all agenda items for April. I hope that will be good enough for you, Councillor Austin.
Yep, thanks.
Councillor Hawkins.
I actually thought the quarterly meeting figures were actually presented to all members, and I'm looking at Chris, and hopefully in future that those quarterly meetings, when Fusion give us the reports, will go to all members as well.
Chair, yeah, that's nothing to hide from those meetings.
Okay, members, I'm going to move this on. Notwithstanding what Councillor Austin said and the commitment I've given to him, there is a proposal from the chair, seconded by Councillor Spencer, that we take away the green, we leave it as white, and we ask for an officer report to accompany the papers of the next ONS for the Fusion annual update. Can I just see a show of hands of those in support of that?
If we could,
Oh, sorry, Councillor Spurn, go on.
This report goes direct to members,
Yeah,
and not through the.
And the report goes to members. All those in favour? Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Any against? Councillor Austin, thank you. Any abstentions? So carried. Thank you. Right. Okay. We'll move on then to item 1.5, delivery of projects to enhance outdoor public spaces. Councillor Hawkins has spoken about this. This is fundamentally Section 106 and monies, and councillors working with their local communities to see the money is well spent. Are there any questions for Councillor Hawkins on this one? Councillor Taylor.
Yes, I just want to ask what the situation is with the spending that's running out of time, because when we had something at not South Brent, Modbury, I forgot where I lived for a minute, then we had two years, was it, from the 106 finances to spend it on sports and leisure and recreation. Now, are we overrunning on any of that now?
Alexis, you're on the line. Can you help out with that one?
Yeah, so shall I come in there? Essentially, they all have slightly different timescales for spend, but our Section 106 monitoring officer keeps a close eye on that, and it is under constant kind of review. I know recently we're looking to do some deed of variations to extend a couple of time limits, and we've already had in principle agreement from developers on that. So if things are nearing a deadline, we do that. But generally, obviously, we're trying to spend it as soon as possible to mitigate for the impacts of developments.
Thank you very much. Is that helpful, Councillor Taylor? Great. Any other? Councillor Spencer.
I'm actually very pleased to see these things. There's a list of places, play area improvements, lighting, drainage, and so on. I'm conscious, as I mentioned before, that there is very little, if anything, to the west of Ivy Bridge and to the north of the A38 in that northwestern corner. Is there any particular reason why that isn't represented? I know something is from Luton there, but I put in pretty much as Southampton put in from my locality fund. But the question is, no representation from the northwest corner.
Well, these funds are obviously from S106 funds, and if your area doesn't have an awful lot of money from that, then obviously the council and Rob Sekula would look at different ways of actually achieving improvements to your play areas. And if there's any problem with those or concerns that you've got, please let me know.
Okay.
Any other questions on this section? Oh, sorry, go on, Alexis. Go on. No, don't worry.
I was just going to say there is some money in Bickley Parish that I think you're aware of, Councillor Spencer, for the Roborough Sports Ground. And in Woolwell, we've also got some funds from a development at Pinewood Drive. So we've recently received those. So we are looking to spend those funds.
Can I? Yeah, I can't speak for Woolwell, but perhaps I should say not only can I, well, I won't speak for it, but I'm not allowed to. But for Bickley, yes, I'm aware of 106 from the development at Tamerton, which is allocated already, and I'm aware that progress, in my view, is tortuous, and I've had no engagement at all from the recipient of those funds, despite numerous approaches. So yes, I'm aware of that, certainly.
Councillor McKay.
I was just responding to Councillor Hawkins' request to let him know. I mean, I've tried several times through the council to raise some money for the play park, some money for the play park in Harpland Ford, and I've been told there's no money to be had.
That is because you haven't got any S106 funds available.
Yeah, look, members, just to clarify that this money is Section 106 money. It has a geographic dimension to it. It is born out of planning gain in old parlance.
Yes,
you will have the money in your area if you've got the planning gain.
I fully understand that, but you alluded to there being other avenues that could be approached, and you'd be looking into them.
There are other grants which are available that most parishes actually are able to achieve themselves to actually develop and improve their play areas. I'm sure that John Parkinson can assist you, or Rob Secula, with those grants that are available.
Any more questions on 106? No, okay, we'll move on from that one then. Thank you very much, and we'll go on to the last one, which is 1.6. Work with the voluntary sector to plan how we can work better together in the future. That's currently shown as green on track. Members, any questions on 1.6 as it appears on the paper? No, it looks like right. Okay, looks like we've finished on that item. So thank you, Mr. Luscombe. Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. So we've got the overview and scrutiny, note the progress. We've also got, of course, which I guess has formed part of the substantive recommendation which we voted on earlier, Amelia, is that correct? So the recommendation is as on the screen, plus the part that we voted on during the course of our discussions on 1.4. Okay, everyone happy with that? Right, okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item 8, 6 monthly update on broadband. Hello, Gemma.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll just start by saying that I think we've established at previous overview and scrutiny that my role here is largely being a middle person in terms of finding out what's happening rather than actually delivering improved broadband. So I'm going to give you an update on what's happening in South Hams, a little about the projects coming forward, and then perhaps what our role could be in the future. So there are 3 suppliers building fibre across South Hams. That's Airband, Openreach and Wilderness. I'll start with Airband. As I'm sure you're all well aware, they're behind schedule. In some areas, Totnes and the area all around Totnes, Salcombe, Thurleston, that delay is well over a year for the residents, a year on what they were originally told. However, a little bit of positive news. In the cluster known as F15, so that's basically Bridgetown all the way up to the eastwards of Totnes, 788 people can now order a fibre service from Airband. That's 5% of that build area. So that's the first bit of sort of positive news and definitive progress that we've seen. Airband now has a team of 3 public engagement officers. Clive Leeworthy is the lead person. Mark Birtwell, who you may have come across, he responds to your emails, parish council emails and resident emails. And Faye Cross is the person out on the ground who will go to parish council meetings. The programme, as it now has been agreed with Connecting Devon and Somerset, should conclude in October next year. We still don't have the details of which houses and businesses are going to be covered. So if residents want to find that out, I still recommend they go onto the Airband website and check. My only slight caveat with that is that I'm told there are some glitches with the data. So if someone gets a shock, please ask them to email me and I will check it for them, because I understand some of the Airband data is not that reliable. And I would recommend all residents register their details with Airband for updates so that they're kept informed. So that's Airband. Openreach. So you'll have seen I've given you an update of the delivery dates in the report for this meeting. They're largely, there's a huge amount of change from 6 months ago. We recognise that most residents would probably prefer a contract with Openreach because it gives them a choice of internet service providers to have take a contract out with. If residents see that there's a way you can check whether you're going to get Openreach on their exchange area. If they're just outside of that, there is hope. I think Airband will be looking to expand beyond the areas that they're currently planned to deliver. So the Airband, the amount of Airband rollout, Openreach rollout is getting bigger. There are way leave issues. I think Councillor Smurden will be well aware of this in Rattery. That's where the land, if Openreach or Airband need to cross over third-party land, they need that landowner to agree it. The issue we have with Openreach is they just won't negotiate with land agents, which we're finding in some areas is a sort of non-negotiable part of the agreement with the farmer or the landowner. But that is where members could potentially come in to help, because we have an instance, we have in Rattery, we have in Little Hampston, there is a landowner blocking it, and that means the houses the other side of the field are not going to get fibre. That's Openreach. And the last one to talk about is Wilderness. They're a smaller company. They are rolling out at the moment in Totnes, South Brent and Salcombe. The slight confusion that Wilderness are throwing up is that they are building entirely underground. They're not putting up the dreaded poles. I can talk more about that if you've got questions on that at the end, but that's Wilderness. You may have heard of Project Gigabit. This is the central government project name for how they're going to put more public money into rolling broadband out to the areas that have been missed. The stage that we're up to with that is they've asked suppliers if they'd be interested in a new public contract across the whole of Devon and Somerset, and we're waiting to hear if basically there's any interest for them to do this, which would then be another big public contract such as we've had with Airband. But unlike Airband, it would not be managed by Connecting Devon and Somerset, it would be managed by central government. So we're at this. We're just basically waiting to see if there will be a new contract coming forward under Project Gigabit. In terms of other funding, there is some positive news. If you're aware of Gigabit vouchers, they're the vouchers that individuals can access. At the moment, it's been 1,500 for a residence and 3,500 for a business. That's now been increased to 4,500 across both of them. So potentially some projects that your residents may have looked at that were unviable may now become more viable, especially given the fact we're going to have a much more extensive fibre network. So the length of fibre to get to those hamlets will be decreasing, together with the fact we've got more funding to help them deliver their projects. There is potential money through the LEP. We've been talking to the LEP. Particularly, the government are currently consulting on whether they need to open up to alternative technologies. So at the moment, they're saying that the government motto is just fibre, fibre, fibre. We won't consider anything else. But it's going to get to a point when basically the remotest, hardest to reach properties probably it's just never going to be able to get fibre to them. So that's where they are looking at the use of satellite or fixed wireless, and that's where we can potentially play a role, because we're looking at much more localised projects, and we've been talking to the LEP about that. So as soon as the government gives the green light to these alternative technologies, the LEP have got money which potentially we could leverage. The LEP are also interested potentially in providing further funding for my role, or the digital connectivity role with us, and we launched an online tool to support residents. They're also interested in developing that further across the whole of the LEP area, so we are talking to them about that. And that's my whistle-stop update. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. I know Councillor Baldry online has a question. I'm going to take Councillor Sweet first in the room, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Baldry, although you're probably going to ask the same one as the one I was going to ask, but I'll let you do it as you've bothered to log on. Councillor Sweet, you first.
Thanks. Obviously, we've been emailing a bit anyway with questions. But I wonder, a Wildernet, are they on track as well? Because in Totnes, they were using the road closure from the gasworks. I don't know if you're aware of that. To do their work, and that was, pretty emphatically set up, and now they're not on track, and they're going to have to come back in October, close the road again. So do you sort of know, I mean, is that them? I know they're all over the place, and they seem to be working quickly, but I mean, Totnes is full of vans at the moment, Airband vans and Wildernet and Openreach, and it's hard to know really exactly who's doing what and who's on track, and one digs up the road and it goes back, and then a pole goes up, and there's not that brilliant liaising. But I mean, obviously, it's a real pain that they're going to come back with another road closure in October. Shops and businesses are really upset about that. We obviously need to make sure that doesn't happen in the half term, the kind of last week of October. So I don't know what influence you can have with that in Devon County.
Yeah, so I'd say since I've had your email, I have regular meetings with Wildernet, so I will go back and ask them the question. The slight issue the difference we have with Airband, they're held to a public contract. So when we say whether they're running to schedule or not, it's like clearly defined in the contract. With Wildernet, they're doing it on a commercial basis, so there is no one that it's up to them, their business case as and when they build. But they did. I mean, it was really positive that they lined their works up. Wales and West. So I will go back and find out what's happened and give you an update.
Okay, let's move out of Totnes, literally and figuratively, and go to Councillor Baldry.
And into Yampton, Chairman. Good afternoon. Yes, my question is sure to be the same as yours. Wildernet are currently operating in Yampton. That's not on this list. They came to our parish council and explained what they were going to do, and they are currently causing some amount of complaint about what they're doing, not too far from where you live. So are Wildernet supposed to be in Yampton? Can we tell them to clear off because they're upsetting people?
can I just add before you answer that, Gemma, just as a follow-up, you know, if you look at it, you know, to add to what Councillor Baldry said, if you look at the appendix, Openreach is supposed to turn up in Yampton in 2024 or 25. There's Airband are supposed to turn up in Yampton in Q2 of 2023, which starts next month. And as Councillor Baldry has very eloquently put, that Wildernet are already digging up the roads in Yampton now, which is, I know that the county councillor in Yampton is absolutely livid because he spent ages getting the road resurfaced and now they want to dig it all up. So, you know, life is not... and I know he's furious because he's speaking right now. You know, and unfortunately, I think the frustration that Councillor Baldry's asking about is, do these guys don't talk to each other, do they?
No, and it's almost deliberately the other way around. They are desperately trying to get there before the other one, so they're not declaring anything. But the only thing I would say that we can't stop Wildernet, and Wildernet have mentioned the Upton actually, but when I asked them for this update, they didn't list it. But in hearing that, they have mentioned the Upton to me before, so I'm not actually surprised to hear that they are looking there. I am a bit surprised that they've started and it wasn't on their list they provided, but I will talk to them about that. The only thing I would say is that the Airband contract is a public contract, so what we've done with CDS and other areas, say Little Hampstead, is where we hear where there may be potential overbuild and it gets to the point that it looks like it will definitely happen. CDS will look at de-scoping Airband from that town. I mean, and I don't think Airband are actually planned to come to Yampton anyway, the centre of it. So yes, there is going to be overbuild in urban areas. Like in Totnes, I think we're going to have 3 different suppliers building over top of each other because there's so much money in it for them.
Councillor, it might be useful for you to know.
Chairman, can I do a quick supplementary, Chairman?
Yeah, go
on. Not so much to Gemma as to the county councillor. The complaints I am getting are that they are blocking people's driveways and people can't get in and out of their properties. I know they're a statutory undertaking, but can that be stopped, please?
Almost certainly not, because they send letters to homeowners warning them that they're going to do it, and they have to allow fair access, but after that they don't. What I was going to say is that I encourage district councillors to speak to their county councillors. Councillor Hawkins and I are able to put pressure on highways to apply for what's called a Section 58 notice, and a Section 58 notice can delay them for up to 12 months. Now, that is as much power as the Highways Authority has. But I would recommend to all district councillors, buttonhole your county councillor and get them to start applying for Section 58s, because that is the only way that you can delay the process. And if that helps in an area where you've got 3 different businesses all working, by stopping one for 12 months, that would then potentially alleviate some of the situation. I'll come to Mr Mullineux, then I'll come to you, Councillor Sweet.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, if you live in a remote area, nobody will want to connect you to broadband, to fibre anyway, and that's the irony of this. So you've got commerciality, which is companies like Wildernet and Openreach trying to beat each other to get broadband in and customers.
Absolutely.
And you've then got the public contract and even Project Gigabit contract, which the government are proposing, which I think will fall into the same trap as the current CDS contract, which is people will not bid where they don't think they can make money, because so you've almost got commercial fighting against public, and I don't think it's ever going to be suitable for residents of the South Hams and for generally rural areas such as Devon, unfortunately.
No, I agree. Thank you. Councillor Sweet.
Yeah, I just, I mean, Wildernet are digging everywhere, but they literally dig about that deep and they are pretty quick. They move on quickly. And my personal advice would be not to block them, because you don't want those airband poles. I mean, I have now got 6 poles that I can see from my bedroom window, where before we had nothing, like nothing at all in our area. And, you know, there's so many people so upset that they've got massive poles, you know, right in front of their lovely view over Dartmoor. So that would be my personal.
Sounds like good advice. Thank you. Any other questions for Gemma on this hot potato? No. Okay. Well, thank you, Gemma. Thank you for keeping us in the loop, because it's quite complicated to understand what's going on. It's much appreciated. Thank you. Okay. Right, members, we will move on then to agenda item 9, Councillor Hopwood and Mr Dale on customer access strategy and contact centre update. I'll give you a minute just to...
Thank you, Chairman. This quarter has seen a lot of progress in systems that bring about positive change for the contact centre, and help reduce the burden of the work on the rest of the organisation. Due to our forward-thinking approach to work and the ability of our NetCourse systems to join together all of our contact routes into one seamless experience, we are pulling out more valuable and productivity from the team. Maximising the benefit of our technology and using a single queue, contact centre officers can now take phone calls, social media conversations, emails, web chats and web form requests in the same workspace and all managed in the same way. That not only increases the speed of response but gives a consistent experience whichever route the customer chooses, whilst reducing the workload for the rest of the organisation. Over the next few months, this will only increase, and for the same capacity, the contact centre will be delivering more benefit for the council. This capacity allows the contact centre to support occasional and unusual demands, like the upcoming elections and questions around voter ID. Training has taken place on surveys to enable us to gain instant feedback on customer sentiment and improve the quality of call taking. And more intelligent automation will reduce effort on simpler calls and free up resources to deal with more complex calls. You can see from the data in Appendix A that the other work, i.e. not phone calls, completed by the contact centre has increased, and we expect further increase in the coming months. The average wait time shown in Chart 3 has continued to stay in the improved range delivered last summer, with some drops in certain areas of performance in January and February. The drop in percentage calls answered in 5 minutes has been caused by 3 contact centre staff being seconded to other parts of the organisation and leaving a gap. As our contact centre is quite small, this is a significant amount of our capacity. The performance is still well above the 80% target, and this is just a temporary blip. These staff members were released swiftly to support other parts of the council, specifically the waste project and the housing teams. Recruitment has now taken place, with the roles being offered and some experienced staff increasing hours. We are looking into the busiest period of the year, with council tax bills going out. The council tax teams are providing significant additional phone support this year that should deliver a much improved service to our residents. And in the main bulk of the agenda, you'll see that on 3.6, our online feedback shows an improved score of 4.34 out of 5 stars. So we're definitely going in the right direction. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hotwood. Did you want to add anything at this stage? No. Okay. Questions then, please, members. Questions on the report? Councillor Spencer.
Thank you. Definitely not speaking for Walwell now. The graphs and whatever, the charts, whatever, look very impressive. So congratulations to all. And I noticed that you talk about online feedback, which is presumably after the client contact. Is there anything that we do as a council in terms of asking our customers what they want from us? Because I couldn't see that, and maybe it's there, but so it's before the event. Do they get an input into what we are providing in the way of support for them?
What do you mean by what we are providing? Because obviously they know the council services we're providing them.
No, and this is about the way you're providing them. So are members of the public, are residents having any input into the way we deliver our services? Does that help at all?
No, that's beyond me.
Do you mean are we consulting members of the public on the best ways of access into the council?
Yeah, on the services that they want to see. I know we ask them for feedback after the event because this says that we do. But I'm asking, do we ask them about what they want to, this support to? Sorry, I can't explain it any clearer than I have.
I understand. So you're talking about, in effect, customer-centric design of our service is the technical type of phrase. Yes, customer involvement. I would say that with the waste service, I got lots of feedback about how I needed to improve the waste service. That was sort of after the event, but no, it's something we need to improve on, Councillor Spencer. I think, I mean, I'm still firmly of the opinion that most residents never want to contact their council. So we need to, for those that need to contact the council, we need to make it as easy as possible for them to do so and give them as many ways of accessing the council that suits them and their abilities. And I think it goes beyond just digital services, it goes beyond phone services, it goes out to our locality officers. And I think we need to look at our accessibility to residents in all circumstances. And I think it's something that we need technology as a base to give us that platform so that we can then look at those other areas, is my view. Don't know whether that helps.
If I just add to that, so we do have a customer service survey that goes out periodically, and that does ask how people are contacting us and then the effort involved in that. So although it's not directly asking the question, we can see whether if they're contacting us by the phone, is that a higher effort route than going online at 24/7? All those different options. So there is information around the subject rather than asking them directly.
So they're not just being asked about their experience; they're being asked. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Molyneux.
I'm going to ask Mr. Davis a question because I don't know the answer. I probably should. Is on the online feedback for when you've contacted us and so on, do you get the option for free text to actually say what you would do different or how would you improve the service?
Yes, you do. And the comment about the surveys that we're rolling out. So we've had it online for a long period of time, and it goes up and down. The trajectory has been improving for quite a long time now. And you basically get the option of how easy the process was for you, give it a rating, and then a free text field as well, which we use online for quite quick feedback. So if we release a new process, we can monitor that process and get feedback straight away. If people aren't understanding questions, finding certain things too hard, we can go in quickly and make those amendments. So we act on that feedback very quickly, and the plan is to do the same for the contact centre as well, for phone calls, so we can see where people are struggling to access a service or to understand what they were being asked or how the customer service person was dealing with them. So yes, it is free text, and we get a lot of useful comments. We get quite a few comical comments as well, but it is very, in general, it is very useful.
Okay. And, okay, I'll come to you, Councillor McCain, then I'll ask mine after you. Go on.
I mean, you talk about I can't remember the terminology. A person-free. An unmanned is the term, which unmanned foyer, and as I've said, and I've had an exchange with Mr. Molyneux about this, I just completely think that's wrong. But I'm not going to fight that fight here. But you do mention about this this yellow phone. I was directed to this yellow phone the other day in order to pick up something, and it took me ages to find it. I'd never used it before. And is it not possible to have that beside the front door, the foyer door, as opposed to round? It's impossible to find unless you know where it is.
Councillor Upwards indicated she wants to reply there. So.
Yeah, thank you. It isn't. It's ridiculous where it is.
Yeah.
And the whole foyer is being reconfigured, so that will disappear. So it'll go inside into a warm space.
Okay.
And we'll have computer desks in there. We'll have the toilets will be open. It'll be a warm space for someone if they want to come and do some work. And they can talk on. They can go like we are at Teams and speak to whoever they want to contact in the council. And we are getting all new signage done because the signage to the entrance is terrible at the moment. So it's all being redone, and it's all on order at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
I just said the only reason it is in a not ideal location. The only reason it was put there was so it was undercover, so that if it's raining and people are by the front, right by the front desk, there's no cover there. So But it does see very little usage and dropping all the time, less than one per day. Yeah.
Okay, I've got a question. It might be for Mr Mulleneux, though, rather than Councillor Hopwood. I don't know. Councillor Hopwood referred in 4.3 to the secondments, and obviously that has affected performance. So is that evidence of a failure in future proofing that we're having to second out of the call centre? Because obviously the call centre is a really important part of the operation.
I wouldn't, thank you, Chair. I wouldn't say it's a failure to future-proof. I think one of the challenges we've always had with the contact centre is it tends to be the entry point for the organisation, and people come into the contact centre, they get a broad experience of the council, and then there becomes opportunities elsewhere in the council that they say, I fancy a go at that. And so what you tend to have is we have a constant flow, which is great for the rest of the organisation, but less good for the contact centre, of people come into the organisation, they come and work in the contact centre, and then they move onwards and upwards through the organisation.
So does it follow then what you're saying is that some of our most junior and inexperienced staff are the ones working in the call centre?
We have a constant we have a journey of staff coming in and working, and they start on, they don't just go into the contact centre and say, right, you start taking housing benefit calls to support residents. They start off with simple queries, we train them up on that, we then train them as they get more experienced, and then some stay. They don't all leave. There are some contact centre staff that have been in the contact centre since I joined, and they're still in the contact centre, but a number take the opportunity to move on to other opportunities.
I only ask because it's a really important part of the operation.
Absolutely.
You know, customer facing is king, actually. And it's important that they, okay, fine, thank you. But that's answered the question anyway. Members, any other questions on this paper?
So I'm
Councillor
just,
Jackson.
I don't know if it's right. I'm just curious to know how many people want face-to-face contact. They told you on the surveys.
We don't specifically ask the question, but the face-to-face contact at both authorities has been dropping for a number of months. There is still a desire for it from some people, but again, that partly is probably because they're not aware of our other access routes. But the numbers are very, very low. So as an example, the emergency phone is now, let's say, less than one per day. And if we did reopen reception, or did had a face-to-face area where people could come and meet us, whether that would drive any additional demand is the question. So using the information from West Devon, we know that we had 2 days open in reception there. We came down to 1 day, and we have seen a slight increase on that 1 day from normal, but it hasn't doubled. So people who were coming on a Thursday, they haven't shifted. They don't want to come and see us so much that they're coming to see us on a Tuesday. That was more likely people that visited because it was convenient to visit rather than they needed to or particularly wanted to. But we don't ask that question. No, we don't go out and poll that.
Councillor McKay.
Yeah, you'll be aware that Citizens Advice, which is just up the 20 yards away, they've actually picked up some of the slack, and they're actually getting some extra funding, I believe, in order to do that. So those people that you say the numbers are dropping, well, they're going to Citizens Advice, some of them, and there are a lot that just won't be going to Citizens Advice. They'll just be going home. So I think you've got to be careful about the statement that there is no need and the need is dropping. I mean, it's actually been displaced insofar as Citizens Advice is picking up some of that slack. Yeah, that was my only point. Yeah.
Okay, members. No? Okay. In which case, thank you, Councillor Hopwood. Thank you, Mr. Dale. That's great. Right, on to agenda item 10 then, please. Oh, Councillor Hopwood, come on.
Sorry, very remiss. I just wanted to say, and I remembered to say it 5 minutes ago, and then 5 minutes later forgot to say it, that this contact centre is really evolving now, and it is thanks to Mr. Davis and the work he's putting into it. He has completely transformed the way that things are being, at long last, that things are being done in this contact centre. So I just wanted to pay, I think we should say personal thanks to him, because he is really, although he ties me up in knots sometimes, and he makes a A4 sheet of paper about 6 sheets long, but he is absolutely brilliant in what he's bringing to this centre. So I just think we should acknowledge that as a, if you could, as a group, please. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
Happy to do that.
Do you want to raise that?
No.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. So we note the approach and actions to implement customer access strategy set out in 3. Note the actions taken to improve the contact centre performance set out in section 4, and applaud the officers for their endeavours.
Sounds very good.
Okay, happy with that, everyone?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, grand. So done. Thank you, Councillor Otwood. Okay, agenda item 10 is task and finish group updates. Councillor Brown, would you like to come forward as chairman of the consultation and engagement strategy and give us a verbal update?
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Yes, we reconvened our meeting of the consultation and engagement task and finish group this morning, where primarily the focus was on looking at the consultation that took place regarding the Ivy Bridge regeneration project, and members of the task and finish group put a number of questions to Mr. Brooke, which he answered. So sort of a brief discussion regarding that ensued, and we have agreed that the next meeting of the task and finish group is where we will look at the new strategy proper and report back.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Councillor Birch?
Yeah, yes, Councillor Brown hasn't mentioned the fact that it is proposed that the next meeting of the, in fact, it's the final meeting of the task and finish group should take place on the 20th of April, which will give it which will give the task and finish group insufficient time in which to report back to the to this committee at its meeting on the 20th of April with any recommendations. Bearing in mind that will be the last meeting of ONS before the new council takes up its position in May. So, in my view, in seeking to hold the next meeting of the task and finish group on the 20th of April, so that it will be able to report to this committee, is effectively, excuse the expression, kicking the can down the road. I think it's important to allow this task and finish group to complete its task and to report back to this committee with its recommendations at the meeting on the 20th of April. That being the case, I would request that this committee instructs the task and finish group to meet before the 20th of April and that it brings to our next meeting a report and recommendations. So I'd like to propose that we as a committee give such an instruction to the task and finish group.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Birch. Right, so I alluded earlier on, Councillor Austin, to issues that you raised regarding PERDA. I have had independent advice from the monitoring officer, which is relevant to exactly the point you raised, Councillor Birch. So I will, if you forgive me, I will read from the monitoring officer's email. He agrees with Councillor Austin, as you would expect, during pre-election period, the law and guidance issued to the council makes it clear that meetings to carry out normal business can go ahead during the pre-election period, but the business to be considered should not involve controversial local issues. The agreed terms of reference for the task and finish group are to review the council's adopted consultation and engagement strategy, and as part of this view, the consultation process that was undertaken for the Ivy Bridge regeneration project be reviewed. Mr Fairbairn goes on to write, the reference to the Aldi redevelopment at Ivy Bridge adds a political dimension that, had it been absent, would more likely than not have meant that the report and the discussion of the report at the meeting on the 20th of April would have been normal business. However, when the Aldi redevelopment has been discussed in council, councillors have been more politically motivated than might normally be expected, and it has been an issue that clearly divided councillors along party political lines. During the discussions in council, the consultation carried out by the council was one of the main areas of disagreement. To some extent, the division seen in council is reflected in the difficulties that there have been in the task and finish group actually meeting. In the circumstances and in the absence of any overriding imperative, my view would be that any report to the task and finish group should not be considered at the meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 20th of April, but deferred to the meeting following the election. Now, my reading from that, before anyone comes back, is that what Mr Fairbairn is saying is that if the task and finish is going to report on the 20th of April on the consultation and engagement strategy, then I'm looking at you as the chair of that group, Councillor Brown, then that would be totally appropriate if reference is not made to Ivybridge. But what the monitoring officer is saying, and therefore that would make sense, but what he's saying is that if reference is made to Ivybridge, then it's his opinion it falls foul of Purdah. I'm going to come to Councillor Austin first, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Birch.
So just so members are clear, my view on what we've been doing here in this task and finish group. This morning's meeting, in my opinion, was really just a rerun of a planning decision that had already been taken. And we spent more than an hour discussing the pros and cons of a planning application, which really had no bearing upon the task and finish group at all, because we couldn't take another decision or alter it in any way. So the reality of what we've been doing is debating a controversial planning decision, which many people agreed with or didn't agree with and so on, but it doesn't really have that much relation towards what we're discussing here. Now, what I think that Mr Fairbairn has come back on, and he's absolutely spot on here, and this is why I was raising the point as well, is that this task and finish group has become a political football. And since we are entering into a period of Purdah, I think, and I said this at the task and finish group this morning, that it would be wholly wrong for this committee during a period of Purdah to consider anything that was discussed at this task and finish group, because it is totally centred on being a political football. And that's what the advice is being given to us there as well.
I'm going to come back to Councillor Birch, but notwithstanding what you just said, I did make the very clear distinction between talking about a consultation and engagement strategy and talking about Ivybridge. And I think it's very clear that they are two different things. Councillor Birch.
Yeah, I think the problem is that, first of all, I think Mr Fairbairn is making a mountain out of a molehill. That's my first mark. But secondly, as far as Councillor Austin's he's making it sound as though the task and finish group has been just a political arena. Can I speak, please? It's been far from that. The politics has not entered into the arena as fast as this task and finish group is concerned. No, please,
Councillor Austin, please.
I didn't interrupt when you were speaking.
I will come back to you.
As chairman of the council, you should know better.
Councillor Birch.
Okay.
For the record, Councillor Birch, I will tell people when they should and shouldn't speak. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Right. Can I just make it clear what the position is? The position is this, is that the task and finish group have looked at the way the consultation was taken place. What in fact happened, there was a consultation document prepared, a consultation took place, and the results of that consultation gave rise to certain findings. The purpose of the task and finish group's task is to look at that process and to see whether or not we as a council can do it better in the future or improve our consultation or a survey procedure. All that was discussed this morning is that the members had before them the consultation documents, the results, and Mr Brooke was questioned by members of the task and finish group as to the means and method of consultation. Politics didn't come into it at all, and it was Mr Brooke gave lengthy answers to the questions, and it was not, and politics did not enter into the arena. So we as a council need to, this committee needs to receive from that task and finish group its comments on what it may do better in the future in respect of consultation. It may decide, well, that's the way we did it, is fine. So all we're being asked to consider is the means of consultation. there was no discussion on the matter of whether the planners got it wrong or whether they got it right, whatever. That doesn't come into it. So this, bearing in mind, members, that this the instruction from this committee to the Task and Finish group arose out of a meeting at the beginning of November. We're now in March, and it's surely between November and April that Task and Finish group should complete its task. Therefore, what I'm asking, or what I'm saying, is that this should be brought to a conclusion, and the way it can be brought to a conclusion is there is no need at all for party politics to come into it. And Mr. Chair, I'm sure you'll make certain that when this does come before the committee, the party politics doesn't come into it. And I certainly wouldn't be bringing that into it. I think what we're trying to do is to make certain that in future, the council, when it comes to consider major developments, it gets the consultation procedure right. That's what it all boils down to.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. That's very clear. Councillor McKay.
Yeah, I was at the meeting this morning, and it wasn't political. The only politics that entered into that conversation came directly from yourself, Councillor Austin. Your insistence that it's political is the only bit of politics that entered into it. We were trying to use the opportunity to look at what happened in a perfectly rational and reasonable way, and to gain some lessons from it. And there shouldn't have been any politics. The only politics that was evident was yours. And I would just like to see this whole thing wrapped up. So if we can have a meeting before the 20th, that would be ideal.
Councillor Ross, of course I'm going to let you speak. You have a right to reply. All I'm going to say is that in a minute, Councillor Brown and I are going to sort this out, but in terms of the best way forward. But of course, you may have a right to reply.
So since there seems to be a discrepancy between what actually happened in the meeting, what I would ask is for Councillor Hopwood, who also attended the meeting today, and at one point actually interjected and asked us what was the point of what we were actually talking about, to actually clarify what her opinion was as to what went on.
Right, listen. I have enormous respect for Councillor Hopwood. She knows that. But I do not think, no, Councillor McCann, I do not think that this process of who said what and who did what and who thinks what, I think that's going to help anybody. What I'm going to suggest, I'm going to be totally frank with you, I'll come back to you. Let me just hear what I suggest, then I'll come back to you, Councillor McKay. What I'm going to suggest to Councillor Brown, I would like this task and finish to be completed in this council. I would like Councillor Brown to continue chairing it because he is the chairman of the task and finish group. Councillor Brown can call another meeting. If members of the task and finish group that were appointed by Review and Scrutiny cannot make that meeting, then I would suggest that the political leaders sub them accordingly, and they have the paperwork behind it. A report can then be written by officers. That report will go to the monitoring officer. If the monitoring officer deems that parts of that report need to be redacted because they fall foul of purdah, he will redact them. If he says they need to be given in a closed session, then so be it, he give them in a closed session. If he says that part of it can be given at the April meeting of ONS, then that can happen. But I'm sure Councillor Brown, as the chairman of the task and finish, can find a date between now and the 20th that allows for there to be a proper task and finish conclusion to this, and for the monitoring officer to make a ruling. Okay, if there is, I've heard I'm guessing, Councillor Brown, that you want this concluded before you end your term on the council.
Thank you, Chairman. To try and address a few points. I think it, whilst trying to be objective about this, I think it's disingenuous to suggest it hasn't become political. I'm not going to suggest on whose part, but I think to suggest it hasn't become political is disingenuous. As regards the matter that's being concerned with the Ivy Ridge project, I declare an interest in that as somebody who sat on the planning committee and voted to refuse the Ivy Ridge project. I am happy to have another meeting of this group, but to be completely honest with you, I would struggle to fit one in before the 20th of April, given diary times, okay? But I'm happy to put one together, and certainly on the grounds, as suggested by Mr. Fairburn, that we ensure the Ivy Ridge project isn't brought into it in accordance with his guidance.
So just to clarify, he isn't saying that you can't, the task and finish can't consider it. What he's saying is that you couldn't report during the purdah period on it.
Yes, that's
so. What I'm suggesting to you is that the final report absolutely would consider because the terms of reference clearly state to review the adopted consultation engagement strategy, and as part of this review, the consultation process that was undertaken for the Ivor Ridge regeneration. So you have to consider the Ivor Ridge regeneration as part of the terms of reference. What I'm saying is that the report ought to be published before your time as councillor comes to an end with you chairing it. If substitutes are required, they can be brought in. Then Mr Fairburn can rule on whether the paper can be published or not, because a paper that isn't published cannot fall foul of surely of Purdah. Mr Mullen, am I correct in that?
I would agree. My concern is that
officer time.
It's the officer time. It's the meeting, and I'm concerned about the monitoring officer's position as being drawn into this and being seen to take sides. As somebody who's not been on the Task and Finish group, who has nothing to do with the Ivor Bridge project, I would agree that as an outsider looking in, it looks very political. Just from this debate, is what I would say, but that's my personal opinion.
Hang on, you've got two. You've got Councillor Hotwood, Councillor Rowe.
Okay, Councillor Hotwood.
Thank you, Chairman. As the person with the consultation engagement strategy with my name on it, I've attended 2 meetings of this group now, and both have been a complete waste of time. None of them has looked at the consultation and engagement strategy in its own right. I personally think that one more meeting to look at that in depth isn't enough. I would like to see the whole thing scrapped till after the May election and a new council relook at this strategy, because it is consultation and engagement. It will be for the new council to go and consult and engage on various things, and the whole thing has become political. I think it's sad because it shouldn't be. I think it's wrong because it shouldn't be. As a council member, I want us to consult and engage with residents, and I want it to be done properly. What I don't want to happen is one more meeting that I can't attend anyway because I'm not here on that day, that one more meeting takes place to rush this strategy through, because everything that we look at in task and finish groups takes at least 2 meetings. But you're going to give this, you as whoever you may be, are going to give this one go because the other 2 times the group has met has been such a complete waste of time. It's costing officer time, it's costing money. I would like to suggest you scrap the whole thing until the new council comes in and they do the consultation. Then no one can be accused of politics. We put the old application and consultation engagement to one side, because what I didn't like this morning, Chairman, was that the questioning to Mr. Brooks was really direct, as it should be direct questioning, but was quite forceful questioning. And it was questions that actually could have been asked when the consultation questions were put together. It was pertinent to the consultation questions, which was over 2 years ago. I think we went out to consultation in 2019. I think we went out to consultation, and it was criticising parts of that. We've had plenty of time as a council to criticise that. It shouldn't have come to now. So I would like the whole thing scrapped with fresh eyes and a fresh approach to how this is worked out.
I would imagine it was scrutinising rather than criticising.
Yes.
And that
it was criticised.
Well,
can I just respond? Because the point is this: is that Councillor Hotwood has said that we've not considered the consultation and engagement strategy. That, in fact, is the only remaining item to do. That is the next item to consider. Once that has been considered, then the report can be prepared and come to this committee. If Mr. Molyneux says that there's a call on officers' time and they can't do that, then I'm sure a few members from both political parties can put the report together. They don't need officers to do that. Councillors, members can do that if officers' time are not available.
Councillor Rowe, I apologise. I should have come to you a moment ago.
Thank you, Chairman. No, it's fine. Councillor Hotwood actually said quite a bit of what I was going to say, because what are you hoping to achieve from this task and finish group? Because it is political. We all know that, whether you like it or not. And I just think that you're wasting time. You're wasting officers' time, members' time. What are you going to achieve at the end of the day? Not very much. I've never seen task and finish groups, and all the years I've been on the council, actually receive anything else than just a talking shop. And I think that you need to draw it to a close. We're in a talking shop now, and I feel really upset about this because totally unnecessary. And we haven't seen the last of Aldi yet. Mark my words, they will be back with another planning application in the not too distant future. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Let's try and divorce the Aldi side of it entirely from the conversation. What the task and finish group was asked to do was to look at the consultation and engagement strategy, which you might recall Councillor Rose had actually already chaired a task and finish on. And what the group was trying to do was ascertain whether the task and finish strategy that this council this committee had endorsed, had gone to the executive, whether that was the right one and how that squared with the consultation and engagement strategy used for the Ivy Bridge regeneration project. That's the terms of reference. Did the two work together? Do the two work together? So the point of what the task and finish was supposed to achieve was the task and finish was supposed to come back, working with the executive member with a series of recommendations that either the existing consultation and engagement strategy was fit for purpose, or that it wasn't, and that it hadn't worked with specific reference to the Iverbridge example, and these were the recommendations to go to exec to be adopted as part of that overall strategy. That was my understanding, and really I would have thought, having agreed that in November, it would have been possible to do that by now. And in fact, task and finish is supposed to be exactly that, task and finish. I promised I'd come back to you, Councillor McKay, and then I will come to Councillor Pearce.
You always take me by surprise. I'm going to break the habits of a lifetime and agree with Councillor Hotwood. I actually think that it's important how we engage with the public. It's something that we haven't done very well over the period that I've been involved with. There's been a lot of improvement over that period, I realise, and what we've got in terms of an engagement strategy is better than nothing, but I think it could be greatly improved, and I don't think it's going to be greatly improved by one meeting. And I think we should defer this whole thing until the next administration is formed, and we can do a decent job on it.
Thank you, Councillor McKay. Councillor Pearce.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just want to follow up on something you've just said, because this task and finish group, to me, has always had a fatal flaw in it, in that the consultation process for the Aldi scheme was to be considered in the light of the consultation strategy, which was actually approved way after the Ivy Bridge consultation had taken place. And you can't really reflect what happened before a strategy was implemented. You can say that strategy might have made it better, but you can't criticise what happened on the basis of a policy that's been formed after the event. So there was always this tension in the group that didn't make sense to me, I'm afraid. And I think you've just highlighted that. That's why I put my hand up.
Yeah, I think, Councillor Pearce, and if you will recall, it was born out of the confusion during the meeting at which it was set up, where it wasn't made immediately clear to members whether or not the one that Councillor Rose had chaired had been adopted and what stage it fitted in. So I do accept that, but it's difficult to know the course of action to take now, particularly in the light of what Councillor McKay has just said. Councillor McKay.
That I should make a recommendation to the effect that we should defer this until the new administration.
I'd second that.
Mr. Chair, I'll put forward a recommendation.
In fairness, Councillor Birch had already put forward a recommendation. So first of all, I need to see if there is a seconder for Councillor Birch's recommendation that we proceed as we are. I'm going to give members the opportunity to propose to anyone to second that.
Have we heard it?
Councillor Birch had proposed that the task and finish had been instructed by overview and scrutiny that they were to complete their task and finish this this term. I
Yes.
think, is that the correct term?
Yes.
Councillor Brown.
With the greatest will in the world, the 20th of April is, to be fair, only a month away, just over a month away. And if the compulsion is to demand that that take place before then, personally, I would not be able to make it. If the committee wishes to pursue it again, fine, but I wouldn't be able to make such a thing. I'm happy to have it on the 20th if that's the decision of this committee, but if just to inform members, I don't think we could hold one before the 20th. Thank you.
Right. Well, it's difficult to know what to do then, really. Is there anyone who's prepared? Well, you forgive me. Sometimes I speak rhetorically. Okay, I am personally not going to second it from the chair. I don't think it's appropriate for me to do that. I'm looking for a seconder from Councillor Birch's recommendation around the table. If I can't see one, which I can't, then I'm going to look to Councillor McKay's substantive proposal to delay, which I gather was seconded by Councillor Austin, so I'm going to ask for a vote on that. I've got no option. The proposal is that the task and finish is delayed to the new council. Those in favour? Those against? I'm going to abstain. Anyone else abstaining with me? Yeah, 3 abstentions. There we are. So I'm afraid, I'm sorry, Councillor Birch, but the motion is carried that it is delayed to the new council to be considered. So be it. Item 11 on the overview and scrutiny annual work programme is to consider April, and that is at the moment a corporate theme on council services with councillors Hopwood and Baldry. There won't be a task and finish group update in the light of the previous discussion. There'll be a biannual fusion report with Councillor Hawkins and Mr Parkinson, and I don't imagine there'll be an annual work programme particularly. So at the moment we are looking at a 1, 2 item agenda, the bulk of which will be fusion, I would imagine. Councillor Austin.
I think, in the light of what we've just done as well, I think we also need to make crystal clear from Mr Fairbairn what his position is when we start that meeting, so that we can have the advice of him to say exactly what kind of information can be given to the council 2 weeks before an election from Fusion as well. So I think what I would like at that meeting on the 20th of April is absolutely crystal clear information to start off with as to what we are there to discuss.
Well, I think there will be a degree of there's always a degree of subjective opinion, isn't there? But I mean, I think what our biannual report, you would expect us, that's normal council business, isn't it? A report into Fusion is normal council business. And Councillor Birch has asked for finances. If that goes into part 2, that won't fall foul of Purdah because it's in part 2, surely.
I would actually recommend we have Mr Fairbairn here at the meeting, because I think, it's quite likely we'll need to get some advice on it as we go through.
I'm happy to talk to the monitoring officer about that. With the chair, I tend to have an agenda conference a couple of weeks before the meeting. I will invite the monitoring officer to that meeting, and we can make a decision in terms of the items that are coming forward and whether it's appropriate to carry on.
I think on the face of it, from the chair, I would say that looks, corporate council services, corporate theme, and the Fusion annual report look to be normal business for the council, in much the same as the exec will carry on meeting during normal business. So I would hope that would be, and as I say, part 2 discussions, if required, are part 2 discussions, and by their very nature can't fall foul of Purdah. Okay, members, are we all happy?
Yeah.
Right, okay, it is almost 10 to 4. Sorry, Councillor Austin, 20 minutes late. But there you are. Better than nothing. Meeting closed.